How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. My name's Jeff. I know it's been a little bit, but I was in Egypt and I just got back beginning of this week, and there's a lot to go over in the next coming weeks. But what I want to talk about today is the connection I feel like I may have found between Michigan's ancient copper mining and the Egyptians and their use of copper. One of the many places we went on this trip, besides the pyramids and Serapeum, Karnak, Saqqara, all those, was the Grand Egyptian Museum, or the GEM, which had just opened actually about 2 weeks prior to us getting there. So that was a pretty neat experience being able to see that. But what I wanted to do when I got to the museum was try to find the bronze and the copper tools that the Egyptians would have used, because mainstream archaeology and Egyptologists say that they used copper chisels for everything. Copper saws to cut the limestone blocks for the pyramids. And I see an issue with that. My main issue with that is that they would have needed a massive amount of copper for making these saw blades and cutting these blocks for the pyramid, as they claim. But before we get into that, I just wanted to go over the similarities I saw between copper tools that have been found in the Americas, mainly in the Great Lakes region. State of Michigan, Wisconsin, parts of Canada and Ontario. There's been some lot of copper tools and knives found up in those areas. And to my excitement, I found a lot of similarities in the Grand Egyptian Museum and the old Egyptian Museum in Cairo. We also went there with the types of knife blades they made, spear points. Some of the tools they're identical almost. For example, this was in the old Egyptian Museum in Cairo. As you can see, the spear point on the left here next to a copper chisel. And here is a spear point that was found near the Cliff Mine in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. I'll put them side by side here and you'll be able to see how similar they really are. And then we can get into the Grand Egyptian Museum, which is where I found most of these other similar blades. And unfortunately, this picture, it's hard to see because of the reflection. Everything is so bright and flashy lights that it reflects off the glass pretty easily, but you can see the knife blades here on the top, and this one that doesn't have a handle on it as it goes back into where the handle would go. Now compare that to this next picture of these knife blades, which these are displayed in the Milwaukee Public Museum. I guess you could say not identical, but very, very similar. Other copper blades that I found was this display right here. We had chisels, knives, barbed harpoon tips, which are also found in the Great Lakes region. I mean, look at this knife right here. That is it's the same shape as stuff that has been found in Michigan. I find it highly unlikely that it'll have to be purely coincidental. Now, this next blade display is probably my favorite one. As you can see here, this blade on the bottom, beautiful. I think that might be bronze, but it's hard to tell from my pictures here. It's about just under 2 feet long. And then you compare that to this blade that was found in Thunder Bay, Ontario on Lake Superior. Very minimal differences, but about the same size, same shape, thousands of miles apart. So yeah, those are the similarities that I found between some tools used in ancient Egypt and tools found that were from the ancient Americans, whoever was here before in the Great Lakes region. Now, seeing these things, I start to question whether maybe the ancient Egyptians and the ancient Native Americans perhaps may have crossed paths at one point. I mean, why else would there be such similar ways to make tools and just the use of copper in general? Granted, the use of copper was a worldwide phenomena at certain times in history, and maybe they shared ideas or traded amongst each other. Copper's use in Egypt goes back to 3265 BCE, and we have been told that they used copper chisels for carving out all the hieroglyphs in the limestone and whatnot, and they also used copper saws to cut the blocks for structures such as the Great Pyramids. Now, modern studies have shown that if you use a copper saw to cut limestone block, for every 1 to 4 inches of limestone cut, you lose an inch of blade on the saw. And if you think about that for a second, the Great Pyramid itself, 2.5 million limestone blocks that weigh tons, huge blocks, 2.5 million of them. And if you're cutting with a copper saw, and for every 1 to 4 inches, you're losing an inch of copper off the blade, you're gonna rip through copper fast. I don't think there was enough copper even mined in Europe and the Mediterranean areas to have supported even just building the one pyramid. Now that's not counting the other 2 large pyramids there, plus all the other pyramids around Egypt, the structures at Karnak, Luxor Temple, and that's not counting the stuff we haven't even found, or that doesn't exist anymore, that's been destroyed. So it begs the question, where did the copper come from that much? Mainstream Egyptology would point towards the copper mines in the Sinai Peninsula, the Wadi Magara mine and the Serabitel-khadim mine, referring to a paper compiled by Ricardo Calvario, Ancient Copper Mines of the Old World. He breaks down the 2 main mines that were found to have supplied copper to the region, and it goes as follows. Wadi Magara's copper output was significant for its time, driven by organized Egyptian expeditions. Estimates from surveyed workings suggest 10,000 to 20,000 cubic meters of ore were extracted with malachite and azurite, yielding 2 to 5% copper by weight. Old Kingdom smelting, efficient for carbonate ores, produced an estimated 5 to 15 tons of copper over the mine use, circa 3100 to 2200 BC. And the Serabitel-khadim copper mine in Sinai, Egypt, the copper production of the Serabitel-khadim copper output was substantial. Driven by organized Egyptian mining campaigns, estimates from excavated workings suggest 20,000 to 40,000 cubic meters of ore extracted with malachite and azurite, yielding 2 to 5% copper by weight. Old and Middle Kingdom smelting, optimized for carbonate ores, produced an estimated 10 to 30 tons of copper over the mine main use, circa 2700 to 1800 BC. That being said, between the 2 mines, 5 to 15 tons for the Wadi Magara copper mine, and 10 to 30 tons for the Serabitel-khadim mine. That's a lot. You could say 15 to 45 tons is a lot of copper. But if you're going through saw blades at 1 inch of metal lost for every 4 inches of limestone cut, not counting how many structures they might have used this method for, plus the amount of copper for making the bronze that they used for decorations. Even the rams on some ships were made of solid bronze. All their weapons, their tools. These 2 mines absolutely could not have produced enough copper for that much. Yes, they absolutely traded with other Mediterranean civilizations such as the Phoenicians, the Minoans, and the Greeks and all that, the Romans eventually, but they also had their own copper uses as well. They also made their own bronze and really couldn't trade all of it, which brings it to a theory that I came across recently in my researches of Michigan's ancient copper mining. Enter the Keftu, or the Kefchins. The Egyptians had records of these red-skinned alien, not space alien, but alien to the region, people that came from the sea, or people of the sea. They were found to have been sailing or brought in with the Phoenicians, and they also brought goods such as copper. They would bring copper oxides along with them for trade. An oxide is smelted copper in a flat, wide shape, and it looks like an animal hide. Hence the name oxide. Looks like an ox's hide. And made it easier for transportation because you could stack them on top of each other in the ship, versus the large chunks of ore or copper nuggets rolling around, taking up space. Now, it was said that the return trip from when the Phoenicians and the Keftu would come to port in Egypt, and when they left and then returned, was about a 3-year span of time, which on a body of water like the Mediterranean seems like a lot, because it doesn't take that long to sail all the way around the Mediterranean and get back into port. Unless the Phoenicians were sailing across the Atlantic Ocean to get Michigan copper, as well as the red-skinned Keftu, and bring them back to the old world. Now, I know it seems like quite a stretch to be connecting the ancient Egyptians with the ancient copper mining in Michigan, but after looking at those copper tools and spear points and swords, I think there actually might be something there. There needs to be some testing done on them, but I know it won't happen. Like I said at the beginning, the comparison between the tools, in my opinion, is too much to be just coincidence. Around the same time frame, maybe a little bit older in America, and it also brings up the possibility that maybe the ancient Americans found their way across to the old world. It does seem unfeasible to think that the ancient Americans would have made it across the Atlantic, because their ships were dugout canoe boats. Granted, a lot of them were very large, long, could have outriggers, but it doesn't seem like they would be likely to sail across the Atlantic, right? While they did find a way to sail across the treacherous lakes, such as Lake Superior, and even modern day sailors on the oceans say that Lake Superior's waters are more dangerous and uncertain than the oceans themselves. I don't know, could be a possibility, something to look into down the road. So what do you think? Do you think that the similarities between the copper tools and knives and blades in Egypt to the ones found in the Great Lakes region, do you think there could possibly be a connection there? Or do you think it's false hope of trying to find a connection between the old world and the new world? Let me know in the comments below your thoughts. If you know something out there that could bring this connection tighter, I'd love to hear about it. Love to look into it. So if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe, share with anyone that would be interested in this ancient theories and history. I want to thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.